끼워주세요. Earlier this month, about 10 days ago, I had the opportunity to visit the CIDA, C-I-D-A, which stands for Community Inclusion and Development Alliance. CIDA is a nonprofit organization that supports individuals with severe disabilities and their families through advocacy, social services, self-determination, training, and much, much needed regular support. And on the day that I visited, the founder, Dr. Bae, was running a workshop for parents of adult children with disabilities. The CIDA office, I want you to imagine, is about 1,000 square feet. It's divided into 2 smaller rooms, and there's a modest open space for meetings. And that day, in the meeting area, there were 18 mothers whose children had disabilities ranging in autism, blindness, Down syndrome, severe learning issues, and cerebral palsy. And they were gathered to learn, to share information, and to support each other. 2 long conference tables were stacked lengthwise, and each seat was taken. And the mothers ranged from the ages of 40 to 65. The women work in delis, dry cleaners, restaurants, medical offices, and family-owned businesses. A few mothers wore makeup and had nicer office clothes. But for the most part, the mothers were working-class immigrants, and every one of the mothers looked exhausted. Many had wrinkles and age spots. They dyed their hair at home if they dyed it at all. Everything about their dress reflected practical concerns. They wore clothing to reflect the weather and the nature of their work. Uniqlo down jackets, generic sweaters, and pants with elastic waists. These women were not friends, but they were not strangers to each other. These mothers were connected with each other as fellow travelers with a profound sense of purpose in the critical mission for their next generation. The workshop was conducted in Korean, the native language of these mothers, and soon it became a kind of alphabet soup of English acronyms specific to the world of disabilities: DAC, IEP, OTP, DAP, SSI, FND, ETP, OPW, CD, EMH, CPDB, and many, many more. As a person who has gone to law school, I could barely keep up with the amount of material that these mothers would have to understand in their second language. When the mothers were able to ask questions, I strained to hear their voices. These were women who did not work in boardrooms. They were not used to talking over anyone else. They were quiet and they were frightened. Nevertheless, they overcame their private nature. They wanted to know if it would be possible to get a transportation voucher when they traveled from Queens to Manhattan for their child with a wheelchair. They wanted to know about work training for their children. One mother talked about traveling for 5 hours round trip just so that her son with disabilities could work for 5. And she was very proud of her son because he could be a contributing person in our society. They wanted to know what the siblings without disabilities could do for their siblings with disabilities. And the mothers wanted to know what would happen to their children when they could no longer take care of them. In these women's faces, foreheads deeply lined, brows furrowed with V's, and cheeks sprayed with freckles, with most not wearing a drop of makeup. You could see their profound worry, their fear for the future, and their immense love. And as I sat in the back of the room in my folding chair, I witnessed how the Korean American Community Foundation was supporting this grantee partner, and I felt some measure of consolation that these mothers do not have to face the long road alone and friendless in America. And after the meeting, I had the chance to speak with the founder, Dr. Bae. And Dr. Bae also has one adult son with autism. CEDA for her grew out of informal coffee meetings using shared email lists of mothers of children with disabilities who wanted to know how to help their sons and daughters. Before I left the CEDA offices, I asked Dr. Bae, what could we do to help? And she said to me, well, of course, financial support is helpful. But the thing that we ask from our Korean community is if you could include our children. 끼워 주세요. Please include our children. So some of us here thank you. Some of us here have children, and some of us do not. However, all of us are sons and daughters. And certainly, as newer Americans, we can remember what it felt like to be rejected, dismissed, and hated. And we can recall what it meant for us to be accepted, respected, and loved. Well, how can we include the children? We can invite the children to parties, to play dates, to our homes, our churches, and workplaces. We can hire young people with disabilities and make accommodations for families with different needs. We can see that our family is growing, inclusive, and more powerful because we care about each other and we care about our collective culture. Kyung, our dear friend and our tireless leader, told me last night that every table was sold tonight. How remarkable is that? And again, I thank you for supporting KACF. This room tonight is filled with very, very special people. And I am deeply honored to be included in your number. But this room is also filled with people who have not always been invited to every table or to every room. I know, because I know what it's like not to have been included. And sometimes every seat at the table is already taken. And sometimes the table is too small. And sometimes our invitations get lost in the mail. And at such times, I remember Shirley Chisholm, the daughter of West Indian immigrants who served as a US Congresswoman for 14 years and was the first Black candidate to run for a major party's nomination for President of the United States. She was a native New Yorker, and she was not invited to many events or places. And Congresswoman Chisholm said, when they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. So, if there are many, many types of Koreans, what type of Korean are we? Surely, from looking at this crowd, we are among the very fortunate kind. And tonight, We, the very fortunate, are doing what young people today call flexing. We are flexing our social power. We are flexing our economic power. And we are flexing our creative power. And we are flexing our professional power. But above all, what will truly make us truly fortunate people is if we flex our compassion. And I hope that tonight, and for the rest of our lives, we can flex our strongest muscles, because we will need them so we can carry as many folding chairs as we can for all of our brothers and sisters. I thank you, I thank my family, but I thank you, my larger family, for being so committed to taking care of our group and our growing America. Thank you.